The following is an encore presentation of stories from the Dooralong Transformation Centre. As I said before the news, we're chatting away to Bruce this morning from the Dooralong Transformation Centre. I've already said good morning to him, but good morning to you again, Bruce.
Morning, Phil.
And you were telling us just before the 10 o'clock news that you have been at Dooralong for 9 months now. You've just stepped up into the role of mentor, but you've been in addiction for how many years of your life?
I've been in addiction for a good 35 years.
It's a long time, Bruce.
It is.
When did it come upon you, this addiction?
Unfortunately, the disease of addiction started for me at the age of 15, where I found myself sniffing some lighter fluid and then marijuana. But it was around 19 that I took up drinking alcohol, and the first jobs I had was working in sheet metal, and that lasted for a couple of years. But just due to being hungover, I struggled with that, and I moved into working for the Encore Council. And once again, you know, through the years of drinking, I'd struggled to maintain the job, and so I found myself in and out of jobs. And I got another job as a car detailer, and I loved all the jobs I had. But yeah, it was hard to hold one down. But not until the age of 26, I decided, you know, that was enough, you know, of doing the drink and drug, and wanted to better my life. So I
because
thought,
it sounds as if you were into it quite deeply. It wasn't just a social thing. You were really addicted at a very early age.
it's so true to say it is a disease of addiction, and I feel that, and I know that now. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So it started for you when you were 15 with lighter fluid sniffing.
Yep.
And then progressed to alcohol.
Marijuana then.
So drugs, and
Yep.
so you've run the full gamut of addictions. Really, have well, not nearly all of them.
Yep.
It's been drugs. It's been alcohol.
It has, mate. It did accumulate. Yeah, at 26, I decided that was enough and bought a lawnmower business to better my life. And I went cold turkey, and with sheer willpower, I got off the drink and the drug, and managed to get 10-year up in sobriety. But yeah, I know better than anybody. I had that one beer, and that led me back the very next day into drinking again at a hotel.
You say you had that one beer. It's a phrase we hear so many times where we speak to people from Dooralong. They're all frightened of just that one drink. And it's become a bit of a cliche, that one drink. But that was, after 10 years of sobriety, that's all it took for you, just that one drink.
That's correct.
Why? And what were you doing ordering that one drink? Why were you even thinking about it?
Well, I was to be best man for a good mate of mine, and he had a split up with his fiancée there, wife to be, and I offered out some support there, and we had that one beer just to comfort him. And unfortunately, I sort of liked that. And
were you aware at the time when you were sort of putting that glass to your lips, were you aware that this could lead you back into addiction?
I had no idea, Phil, the nightmare journey ahead of me.
You just thought, I'm helping a mate out, I'm sharing a beer, he's doing it tough, I'll just have the one.
I sure did.
But no. So the very next day you were back drinking?
The very next day I bought a six-pack and shared it with my missus and my wife at the time, and it was only two beers in each, and we decided to go to the pub and play a few games of pool, and I had a good night, unfortunately, and that scene, addiction started all over again, and it did start with alcohol again this time, and it wasn't long after I was dibbling in cocaine and other sorts of drugs, you know.
Just shows you that addiction never goes away. It lies dormant, but it just takes one little moment of weakness for it to sort of rear its ugly head and take over your life again.
It sure does.
Yeah. So this time you went back into the alcohol. You mentioned cocaine as well?
Yeah, I mixed around. You know, I picked up the tattoo machine. I'd become a tattooist through those years of sobriety, and yeah, I just started mingling with the wrong people, and they were doing that, so I give it a try, and unfortunately liked it, and wasn't creating too much damage around. I was like a functioning addict, you know, but in time it took it all.
Took it all. When you say took it all, your relationship?
Yeah, I ended up having a divorce early 2000 with my wife, and a large part of that was due to alcohol and drugs, and we did go our own ways in work areas, but yeah.
And what about your business that you started? How did that go?
Well, I struggled with it. You know, you can't keep doing it. You know,
No, you can't be a successful businessman and an addict.
no.
So what happened to you, Bruce? Well, how did it play out, this addiction?
Well, towards the end there, losing my wife, losing the business, I found it hard to get, because I've got my face tattooed, I found it hard to find a rental anywhere. I was living with my mum, I was her carer, and she had a fall and broke a collarbone, so we needed to put her into old age care, and that's where the journey really struggled for me. I fell into addiction of meth, amphetamine, and the only place I could find to live was where the meth was. You know, unfortunately, people don't want a drug addict or an alcoholic under their roof, and that's understandable. So, but over the last 3 years, the only place, like I said, I could find was a room in one of those houses where the drug was, and I'd had enough of it, and you couldn't say no to it because the people in that drug addiction, they had no respect, and it's their house, and they were going to do that regardless, with no respect to you. And so, yeah, I had enough. One day I woke up and I said to my sister, you know, that's enough, can you help me? And I think she believed that I was ready this time, and 3 months prior to coming into Dooralong I spent there, she said I could stay there as long as I treated it like a rehab, and I'd done a rehab, and I chose Dooralong because 3 years prior I did a detox, and that was where I was to go, but it wasn't quite the right time, and yeah.
But you made that decision yourself. It wasn't a decision that other people tried to make for you. You just woke up one morning and that was it. You knew you'd had enough.
I needed to better my life, Phil.
Yeah. If you hadn't made that decision, what would have become of Bruce?
Oh, Bruce wanted death. Prior to coming into Dooralong, he'd given up on everything. He had no hope. A very depressed state of mind.
So you were desperate?
I was desperate.
Yeah. And at that point you turned to your sister and said, look, I need help. I want to stop.
I did.
Yeah. And you had been, or you hadn't been to Dooralong earlier, but you had been scheduled to go to Dooralong earlier.
That's right.
So Dooralong was a transformation centre that you were aware of?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. So you got in touch with them, or?
Yeah, I got in touch with Barry there, and he got me a few dates, and I failed to go to 2 of them, but yeah, I rang him up and let him know that, and he got me an interview there and an assessment, and got me in with it probably 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah. And you'd never been to Dooralong? You'd never been to the Central Coast before?
I had never done a rehab prior to Dooralong, no.
Yeah. That surprises me a little bit because, as you said, you were in addiction for so many, many years, and you're clearly a person that has willpower because you stopped for 10 years, but you had never thought of a rehab in all this time, or never sort of sampled a rehab in this time? I
was in denial, Phil, that I really had the problem, and like I said earlier, I was in denial, like I was a functioning addict, you know.
I'm okay as I am.
Yeah.
Did you actually say these things, like I could stop if I wanted?
I always believed I could.
Yeah. But until that one morning when you woke up and you realised that,
Well, like I said too, I wanted to towards the end there, but in the houses where I was living, the drug was, and there's nights there where off the drug you want to try to sleep, where they're making noises 2, 3, all the way through the morning, it was impossible.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you go to Dooralong.
So I go to Dooralong.
That's excellent. That's a good point for us to sort of leave it and have some more music. Morning, still talking to Bruce from the Dooralong Transformation Centre. In the last little segment, we had a look at his old life, the life that he's left behind him now. We left off at that point of his story where he had gone to Dooralong, and you've gone through the gates of Dooralong for the very first time. What were your first impressions?
Oh, I was nervous. Arriving to Dooralong, I was spiritually and both mentally, physically broken, but it didn't take long, Dooralong, before I had some growth there.
Yeah. No thoughts of running away after a couple of weeks?
No thoughts of running away.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me because you were saying earlier that you knew in your own heart of hearts that things had to change. It's not like other people have sent you to Dooralong. You're there of your own free will.
It was time, Phil.
Yeah. Hard work, was it?
It was a little bit difficult in the beginning. The program is run over 4 different phases, and the first one is induction stage and phase, and The first step is honesty, you know, and becoming honest with myself and honest that life become unmanageable.
Yeah.
You know, and the second step is openness, and open to change, and open to power greater than myself.
Yeah.
And the third one is willing, you know, to be willing to new ideas and willing for new things, and to hand my care over to the power of greater than myself. And for me, that worked. It's fine. I'm a Christian upbringing, Church of England, so the God concept works for me.
Yeah, that would have been, I would have found, and I think I've said this before, I would have found that first stage in induction really challenging, the honesty bit. Not just being honest with myself, but being honest with all the other people in the room and being honest with God. That I would have found difficult. Did you find that difficult?
I didn't find that too difficult, Phil. Like I just said, the Christian side of me, you just needed to apply some more honesty to myself and to others.
Yeah. And you have trust in the people that are running the programme? They're good people out at Dooralong?
I do feel
it's a safe environment to be honest, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. So you went through the programmes. What did you learn about yourself? Did you have any of those aha moments where you thought, well, now it makes sense?
It did feel arriving to Dooralong, I was still in somewhat denial that I had a disease of addiction, but learning the program and the 12 steps, I realised that, you know, why I actually used, you know, and that was avoidance of a lot of things, avoidance of responsibility, avoidance of, you know, people. The drug had made me paranoid, so I'd avoid people. And
so I'm interrupting, I'm sorry, Bruce, but so it was a strategy of the old Bruce. Instead of facing up to issues in life, problems, challenges, your strategy then was to avoid it by alcohol, drugs, whatever it might be.
Exactly.
Yeah. And had you spotted that pattern in yourself until it was pointed out to you at Dooralong?
I hadn't, Phil, no. It wasn't until probably the level 2 where well, through level 1 as well, learning defects of character and learning things like that.
It's really interesting, isn't it?
It is.
To have the answer to that question, why have I become an addict? Why did I do it? What is it about me that's making me do it? And then to realise that I can see now what I was doing.
Yeah, that's the core just there, Phil. And the biggest probably thing I did learn in Dooralong was relationships. That the relationship with myself, it was probably the most important thing to restructure. And I found that in the time I've been there, it actually changes other people around me by changing myself, you know.
Tell us a little bit more about that. You say it changes other people around you. Is that in the way that they react to you, or the way that you relate to them?
It certainly is. You know, I think as human beings that we all do judge other people, and I guess I sort of sat at a different table by myself and just changing my mindset and reaching out, dropping down a level. I found people would step up a level, you know.
It's like having to rewire your brain, isn't it? It's the software's had to be sort of unscrambled and rewired.
It is, mate. You just got to simplify it and go back to basics.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that you grew up with a church background, an Anglican Church of England background. So the concept of God and Jesus, that was not alien to you. Was that something that had been a large part of your life beforehand?
It had, Phil. It come from that good Christian family where honesty was a virtue. And I guess, you know, looking back at it now, I wasn't a real honest person in addiction, and both physically, things I'd done, and verbally, you know, I guess I've become a good mouthpiece to certain people.
Yeah. So you're in Dooralong, which is a spiritual sort of place, Salvation Army. So that side of things, the chapel night and the sort of Christian content, that sat very comfortably with you?
It's a very warm feeling, yes, it did.
And your spirit has grown and matured during your time at Dooralong?
It sure has.
So you now have a deeper relationship with God?
Oh, I do have, yes.
Yeah. You'll be going out to one of their local churches. I know they encourage that on Sundays. Which church do you go to, Bruce?
Well, I haven't looked into that up here yet, Phil. I go to St Paul's down there in Sydney.
Yeah.
That's my church.
That's your church.
That's my one, yeah. But no, the last couple of years it's been abstinent.
Yeah. So that's something that when you do move on from Dooralong, you'll be looking, once you've found a place to live, you'll be looking for a good local church
I sure will be.
Area.
Yep.
Yeah. So what about the future, Bruce? You've you've graduated from the program now?
I think I graduate tonight. I've just sit back there for another 6 months and peer mentor.
Yeah.
But I've applied for a tattoo license, and if that comes through, I'll be looking at doing that again once.
Okay. Yeah. What we talk about graduation? What do you have to do anything tonight? Do you have to make a speech tonight?
I'll just be sharing my journey as I have here today.
Yeah. It's very encouraging. I think I've mentioned to listeners before that some of the REMA team have been out there on graduation nights, and there's such a positive energy in the room, and it must be very encouraging for young guys or girls who've just come in and just at the start of their time at Dooralong to see people graduating and thinking that, well, that, if they can do it, I can do it. So it is actually, it's good for you, but it's good for the new people there as well, isn't it?
It sure is.
So you are hoping eventually to get that tattoo license and perhaps rekindle that business that you had.
Oh yeah, Phil, I have a lot of hope there, but if it doesn't come through, it's not the end of the world. I've got a backup plan B, and that's the heavy vehicle license, so I'll be looking at something like that.
Yeah.
But
in the immediate future, it's the mentor role.
It sure is.
Yeah. And how did somebody mentor you when you first came in?
Oh, there was 2 mentors prior for my coming in, and yes, they did. Like you just said, the newcomer, we're all broken, and you do see that, and it's nice to look up to somebody that see the gifts of recovery and the growth in them. So I'd like to share that step 12 and the message.
Yeah. Because we have spoken to people who have admitted that during that first week or 10 days, they were on the verge of simply just walking out the door because there was too much happening in their life. They wanted to go back to their old life because bad that it was something they knew and were comfortable with.
Yeah, I have no doubt that that's the case, Phil. But Dooralong, it truly is heaven there, and the staff members, they're amazing. They're not only good at their job, they love it, and they're extremely helpful.
Yeah. So, any words of encouragement? I think we did this last week when we were talking to who were we talking to? Shane, was it Shane?
That's correct.
Yeah. Any words, because we know that on the Central Coast here, that the level of addictions, be it gambling, alcohol addiction, drug addiction, is quite high, and that's not to we're not criticising anybody for this, because addictions can come upon any of us at any time, so it's not in that sort of judgmental sense, but there is such a need out there for sort of good recovery services. If there is anybody listening, or perhaps they have a family member that's sort of in addiction, any words of encouragement from your experience, Bruce?
I couldn't suggest a better rehab than Dooralong, Phil, just for anyone listening today. If you're thinking about it, the phone number is 4355 8000, and if you get on that phone and give Barry a call, I'm sure he'd be pleased to do what he can.
Yeah, so there you go. If you can't remember that number, just get onto Mr. Google and just type in Dooralong Salvos and you get all the information you need. Now, before we let you go, Bruce, you mentioned a couple of times relationships that you've had in the past. You've got a couple of kids, I believe.
I do have a son and a daughter, yes.
And you've got a sister that you're very close to?
I do have my sister, yes.
How was your relationship with them before you went to Dooralong?
It was quite broken. They were shattered that life had gone down that path, but I'm proud to say now that they have faith in me, and whilst my son is still a bit hesitant to come back into my life so fast, just wants to see where I go and what I do with this, and that's acceptable and understandable.
Yeah, and your sister, because you do seem very, very close to your sister, she was the one that you turned to when you were in desperation.
I sure did.
And she was the one that sort of allowed you to come and sort of stay with her. So how's that relationship grown with your sister?
Yeah, there's a lot of trust back there, mate. Thanks to Dooralong, they've restored that in me, back to the kind of person that God intended me to be. Yeah. So that's even closer than it has been. It is, mate.
Yeah. Look, it's been a privilege to talk to you. You've been on a roller coaster of a ride, haven't you, in your life?
I sure have.
Down, lots of times down, but the up that's occurred for you during the last 9 months or so at Dooralong, it's been really encouraging. You should be rightly proud of yourself. You've done really well. We speak to a lot of people from Dooralong. They've gone there for different reasons, but you actually just made your own mind up that you had to change.
I sure did, Phil.
And you reached out and there was help available. And I think that is the message. If you are desperate, if you're broken, to use Bruce's words, reach out. There is help available. You've got nothing to lose, have you? Just give the Salvos a ring, and if they can't fix you up now, because sometimes there are waiting lists, they won't leave you in the lurch. They'll suggest other programs and give you other numbers that can sort of help you out in the immediacy of your situation. So thank you to Bruce. You'll be going back now for your graduation tonight. We hope there's lots of positive energy, and we pray for Bruce. And if our listeners could keep Bruce in their prayers as he sort of transitions in the next couple of months a little, away from Dooralong, just pray for his business, pray for him, and pray for those relationships with his family. That would be super. Give our love to everybody back at Dooralong. They do a great job.
Thank you, Phil. I will.
Okay. And let you into a little secret. Bruce is usually the chauffeur for some of the other guys that we speak to from Dooralong. So we've had him in a chair this morning, but he's usually sat at the back of the studio, sort of being a support for some other people. So we may see Bruce again next week, but we probably won't hear from him. He'll be sat at the back of the room with his chauffeur's hat on. You've been listening to an encore presentation of the Dooralong stories, which can be heard live every Wednesday at 10 a.m. and repeated 8 p.m. Sunday and 1 a.m. Wednesday, right here on 94.9 rema.cc.